So again, we're honored to have Michael LIGHTY back with us. I never stop learning when I'm in the same room with Michael about the nuances of political strategy, in particular, of course, within the context of the healthcare justice movement. But he's extremely adept at spreading out that conversation and making connections across all of the justice movements. And I'm going to continue to say, and I know Michael has said, that we're only going to succeed when we connect with other justice movements. When we all come together, we all win. But if we remain isolated and small, we're not going to win ultimately. So I think that's a crucial point that I hear Michael make, and I want to just reinforce that. Again, thrilled that he's with us today. Michael, as many of you know, is with the National Union of Health Workers. The Sanders Institute was an advisor for Bernie the last 2 election cycles. And I found out today, we had a little brief conversation at the top end, that he was with one of our common heroes, Ron Dellums, former congressman who I worked for as an undergrad when I was at Cal. And Ron appointed Michael to the Oakland Port Authority as the first LGBTQ representative. So that's a great honor. I just wanted to highlight that, something new to share with you all. We're also going to throw in some updates on activities that are going on around the country. I know Michael has a couple things to add, and we want to bring in people toward the back end to make sure that we're highlighting the work that you're doing, some of the innovative work to again broaden out our coalitions, make us stronger, and ultimately prevail in getting us to national single payer solution through the states, through the regions, through the House and the Senate, in both the national and state legislatures. So with that, let me just bounce it over to Michael and see if you could just open it up for maybe giving us a sense as to where things are. I know it's a fluid, dynamic political situation. It's not entirely clear what's happening now with the infrastructure bill and how that interfaces with the proposed $3.5 trillion, train load of potential social justice reforms, including healthcare. So if you can maybe just give us maybe a 30,000 foot sort of picture, and then we can drill down a little bit and get a better understanding as to what we need to be doing in our space to get our legislation accomplished, especially the state-based universal healthcare, which is where we specialize. But we of course support all the other efforts with Medicare expanded, improved, dropping the age, and also prescription drugs. So thank you so much again, Michael, for coming in here today.
Thanks, Chuck. And I want to say that Alex Lawson has joined us, and he's got a tight time schedule. And he actually, I think, can give us a great introduction if we want to turn it over to him.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Alex?
Michael. And yes, there were torrential downpour today in DC. So my daughter didn't have childcare, so I got to go do her nap soon, or my afternoon is shot. The update is, and obviously Michael or anyone can sort of take us in a direction if I'm going down one path or something. I want to start with saying that Afghanistan is a chaos widget that is thrown into the mix and actually is completely and totally unpredictable what it could do. It could actually make domestic policy, like everyone's like, oh man, we got to do domestic policy now, because right, or it could be like the opposite. It could make the mods. So note that. But as of right now, that is not the case. As of right now, what happened is the Senate has passed both the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which was the BIF and is now the BIB, because I live in DC and we love 3-letter acronyms. So the BIB has passed, and the Senate, and that's actually a pretty enormous thing. I would have lost a $5 bet I was trying to make with somebody, but no one would take my bet because we all thought that they would not be able to get the votes, but they did. They got not only 10 Republican votes, but 18 Republican votes in the Senate. Does that translate to any Republican votes in the House? I would, again, bet absolutely not, because former President Trump is actively against the BIB. and the House members are way more at risk of his wrath than the Senate, than Republican senators. But that is like the most dangerous thing for what we want, is this bipartisan bill becoming the only thing that moves forward. And I want to also state that while, like, infrastructure, good, and the bipartisan bill is bad. It's not good. It's not good enough at all to pass on its own. And I'll return to this, but that was their fundamental mistake. Because they made it bad, it means that we've been able to build a block of progressives that is much larger than the block of moderates who are willing to kill the bipartisan bill if it doesn't move in tandem or right behind the reconciliation package. And the reconciliation package, as of right now, so I know this is a little bit like, but there's two parts of it. And what we've got is the budget resolution, which the easiest way to think of that is the size of the buckets. So how much money is there going to be in each of these committees? So each committee gets a bucket. And the bucket on the side of the bucket does have some notes on it of how to fill it, but those notes can be ignored completely. The committees are actually empowered to do what they want, but it is definitely a general guide. So we have won sort of getting in on vision, hearing, dental, adding vision, hearing, dental on Medicare, getting Medicare to negotiate drug prices. And that was really doubled down when President Biden made a speech on it. His first speech on sort of the Build Back Better as it's moving forward was on Medicare negotiation, which remember last time we talked was still in flux, and it was actually on the out. It wasn't on the in. There was potential. So now you see it, and everyone has staked themselves to passing vision, hearing, dental, Medicare negotiation, expanding HCBS services to create a long-term care foundation built on the Oregon Medicaid model. And what we don't have is the lowering of the age. But those buckets with the guidelines on them are, it's not written in stone. The committees are still left with a lot of leeway. And Pramila Jayapal and Bernie Sanders are not at all backing off of their demands for lowering the age, and neither should the grassroots. We should actually never fall in behind the compromise. We have to demand everything, which also includes an out-of-pocket cap, which has not been mentioned actually at anywhere along the process. So that one we want to get into as a sort of technical fix. And that is also where we are going to talk about our waiver process as sort of as a back of the house thing, a technical fix. It's in relation to not just these Medicare pieces, but also the fact that we're going to close the Medicaid gap, which is in the resolution as well. So that's a huge state-based play. And we don't know how they're going to do it. They could do it through the exchanges, or they could create a Medicaid lookalike, which is another thing that they've thought. And Senator Warnock is carrying that, has written that bill. But that definitely puts a bunch of state-based stuff in play, and the ACA subsidies, which again is a lot of state-based. So when you zoom out and you look at it, and Michael can maybe go a little deeper on this, you look at it as all of these health things are happening in one bill. So they're not like individual components. This is a reform of the health system. And so adding state leeway to do other things, because we're saying we're going to address some of the problems at the state level through federal action, it just fits. And it doesn't have to stand on its own. it can actually be seen as helping to conform, which is one of those policy things where you conform the policy to the result that you want to get. And that is why, sorry, I'm sort of jumping back and forth, but what we are up against is one of the dumbest processes in DC, which is the reconciliation, because now we got to get the budget resolution to pass in the House, and that is risky. We could lose, but we're still looking pretty strong. I'll come back to that part because it's Monday. But then right after that, we have to tell everyone what we want. They're going to write the stuff down. They're going to fill the buckets. And then the parliamentarian is going to go through and be like, yes, no, yes, yes, no. And no one knows, what she's going to base it on. It's a very arcane and opaque process. And obviously she's a human being, and you've just put you put like $4 trillion of spending in the hands of one person. So I would imagine industry is going to come down like a hammer, all right. So it's a very vulnerable part. But when we put it all together and we say this is the health components, and we're reconfiguring a lot of these health components, that's where a waiver, reforming the waiver, is just granting states a little bit of leeway in how they can get to the end result, which is clearly the legislative intent of the whole thing, which is providing more healthcare at the state level with federal assistance. So next step is in the House. The action has gone to the House. They went out for recess. Nancy Pelosi has called them back in next week. And the moderates, a band of 9 to 11 of them, have bucked up and said that they are going to vote down the budget resolution, the good stuff, the buckets, if we don't pass the bib alone. And Nancy Pelosi has called them amateur hour and, basically just written them off and is going to try to bulldoze them. And everyone has opinions about Nancy Pelosi, but I will say this one thing: she's tough as coffin nails, which is why when she's against you, you're like, damn. But when she is on your side, you're like, yes. So I would bet on her winning this showdown against these mods who don't have much juice. There's not that many of them. And especially because on balancing them out are 9 on the record progressives, the squad, who have said they will vote down the bib if it doesn't pass with reconciliation. And then standing behind those 9 is the CPC, which is 90, saying as a block, they will follow this same tactic. And so, that's Nancy Pelosi is good at counting yeses and nos. And we'll get an answer on Monday. But as of right now, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and President Biden are all saying we're going to do both the things together, and they're going to include these big healthcare these big ticket healthcare items. Sorry, Michael, that was a little jumbled, but hopefully you can work with it.
No, that's fantastic, Alex. And we really appreciate you taking the time. I mean, the reconciliation process is technical. We've had recent discussions with Senator Wyden's Finance Committee staff, and also have engaged through People's Action, which is a national network of community-based organizations. They've weighed in with Majority Leader Schumer. A letter from, I think it's around 40 state affiliates, went to Senator Schumer, and we've had 2 meetings with his office on this issue. And both of them have not raised any substantive objections to the policy we presented, which, remember, means that we can more easily integrate Medicare funds. We can explicitly waive provisions of ERISA and obviously the existing waiver authority around Medicaid and the other programs. And we can utilize savings on a pass-through basis to expand access does not have to go back into the budget. And finally, we can apply for state-based waivers on a multi-state basis. There has not been raised any objection to the policy. They've raised, as Alex alluded to, certain concerns about whether it can in fact be included in reconciliation. But Alex has made a very persuasive case, as he did here, that these issues are actually part and parcel of the expansion of health access and funding of the expansion of access to healthcare at the state level, and therefore is part of a budget resolution as expressed in these policy parameters. Because in fact, what you can do if you include Medicare and if you can, overcome these ERISA objections, is actually fulfill the budgetary mandates of those funding expansions. And so it's really it's integral to it. And that's a case that we may have to continue to make with Finance Committee staff, but they couldn't refute it in our most recent discussions. And so if you look at it, this vehicle is the best possible vehicle that we have. And at the same time, the most important public fight we have to wage is around age expansion and the out-of-pocket cap, because those are the toughest things to get. We don't need a public campaign around this state-based language. We're either going to be able to move it persuasively in a way that the parliamentarian accepts, or we're not. Right. And we've weighed in sufficiently with the political support from Oregon in particular. You've got the official Universal Healthcare Task Force behind it. You've got SEIU behind it. You've got the key state legislators who are moving universal healthcare in Oregon behind it. And you've got Senator Wyden, who has expressed publicly his support for state innovation and specifically state single payer in Oregon. And so you've got the forces lined up in Oregon at the grassroots level, combined with some national support that's gotten the attention of the majority leader, as well as a policy case that's very clear cut and doesn't really cost these members of Congress or senators anything, right? Because they can say, well, we're just enabling the states. And that's where they're, of course, throwing a lot of the dollars anyway. So the real public fight has to be around these other provisions, and especially the age reduction, I guess, gets complicated as well, which is why the political push has to be even stronger. And the out-of-pocket max is essential to continue to level the playing field between traditional Medicare and Medicare Advantage, which the expansion of benefits, I know people are kind of skeptical sometimes, well, we're just going to get the expansion of benefits. That's actually quite huge because you don't have to buy supplemental policy. It takes away at least some of the advantage that these for-profit Medicare Advantage plans have. And it really does enhance traditional Medicare in an area where it's quite problematic, particularly dental. And so it does matter. It does matter. It's not nothing. It's not as much as we need or want. Others have asked in the questions we got, Alex, hey, what about trying to, if we can't put it in reconciliation, let's put it in the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill, I think it's fair to say, it's just under heightened scrutiny and just subject to this bipartisan bullshit that we don't want to go anywhere near.
Can I'm going to jump off after this, Michael, but just to add that I don't think the infrastructure is the second play, and I don't think we're nearing to when we need to come up with our plan B, but we always have plans A to F. What we're building now with the changing the waiver guidelines, this is not going away. If we get bird bathed out, so first of all, what we have to do is just convince everybody to take the risk, right? It's got zero downside, right? Like put it in, oh, the parliamentarian might take it out. And you're like, okay, well then the parliamentarian might take it out. Here is your argument, which is super persuasive because it's true, right? Like just on its face, you're saying our goal is to get coverage to all these people who are missed. And we're saying, oh, well, you should give the states some flexibility in how they do that. Maybe Alabama actually wants to just create a single payer system. You don't know. No one knows. So like they can say that's politically ridiculous. And you're like, well, that's not the question. The question is policy wise. And that's the key. They have no policy response. So then if the parliamentarian bird bats it out, I think, again, we don't have to go through plans B here, but we have built an apparatus here that is pretty formidable. And we'll take that directly into HHS next, right? Like we'll take that into, the difficulty is getting 60 votes. The reason reconciliation is the best avenue right now is because it only takes 50 votes. So we're going to continue to look for either no vote executive action, plan Bs, or other what we all call must pass bills in DC. And once you've got it into a package that you can throw into a moving train, which we have packaged it up, then we just keep waiting for each train, and everyone that passes by, we try to throw it in until one time they don't see it or whatever, we get it through and then we're done. This is the time-honored DC tradition. The only thing that would be better is if we could make it pay for something, and then we could call it a pay for, and then you can just attach it to everything. But that is where we are. And I just would like to second and third what Michael said. The fight is on lowering the age. They do not want us to add 23 million or over 20 million people to traditional Medicare. And they're throwing everything they can at us on that one. We can't give up. And it is extremely likely that we will be given a significant shot to take at it. After resolution passes, so that is a risk that it won't pass. But after it passes, we have about a month where we're going to be duking it out. And there will be a time when something collapses or they give up and they say, oh, the parliamentarian is going to definitely not do that. Money becomes free. And that's when we have to be ready to say, perfect, because here's the policy to use it on, which is lowering the Medicare age. There's been a bit of a fight where they're trying to pit long-term care, the HCBS, against lowering the Medicare age in the press and on the Hill. So it would be like pitting Senator Casey versus Senator Sanders. And we have to reject that completely, right? And say, no, we're not pitting these programs against each other. We want all of it. So I would just say that's the key aspect right now is pedal to the metal. This is the compromise. We want single payer healthcare for everyone in this country. This is a step along the way, but this is already the compromise. No more compromises. We want all of the things. That's the stance that Social Security Works is taking. And I think it strategically is beneficial to all of our fights.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. Really appreciate you coming in, and everyone can see why you're the most adept and strategic operative on our side in DC. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks so much for getting in. Good luck with your daughter. Take care. Talk soon.
Yeah, so I just to continue a little bit on, Chuck, I know there were some other questions raised, and I think I think it's fair to say that we've gotten within our movement real questions about why we're letting the Democrats off the hook, or why we're accepting this compromise of Medicare expansion instead of Medicare for all. And I think we're not backing down, number one, on our demand for Medicare for all. But it's also true that really, if you think about the history of our movement, of our demand for guaranteed health care through a Medicare for all single payer system, we basically had the right policy and the argument on cost savings and the moral argument on our side, really, since Claude Pepper was fighting for this in the 30s and 40s. It's never been the case that this isn't the right thing to do. It's always been the right thing to do. The question has been, how do we force Democrats in particular, and can we get allies from the other party to do it? Where's the political will to do it? We should not, I don't think, waste our time simply saying, well, this is the right thing to do, Democrats, do it. We have got to demonstrate that it's in their political interest, whether they want to or not, to do it. And that we haven't done. The argument is not to the Democrats, oh, this is the right thing to do. The argument is back to us. How are we going to organize a movement that can force them to do it? And so I just don't think it's productive to continually lament or point out that, yeah, this is the correct policy. Our problem is that we've got to force the policymakers to act on popular support and to act on the need. I mean, my situation personally, yeah, I'm basically, because of the commercial insurance market, losing my private insurance at the end of the month and can't find a plan that actually contracts with the specialist I've been seeing for a somewhat rare illness for the last year. And so I'm now going to have to, change plans, change doctors, the whole thing. And possibly, if I were to buy a new commercial plan, pay $2,100 a month. So, I mean, this system is completely broken and unsustainable. And the policy arguments are persuasive. So you have to ask, well, God, why if we have 70% support popularly, why if we can demonstrate, like in California, it's going to save literally hundreds of billions of dollars over the present system in the next decade, how the Congressional Budget Office can say it's going to save $650 billion a year to the federal government. Why aren't we doing it? Because we haven't created a political coalition that can overcome the power of the healthcare industry. That is the simple and straightforward answer. We haven't created a political movement that can overcome the power of the healthcare industry. And that's why Chuck's opening remarks are so essential here. What is the justice movement that we can build, right, to do that? We have fought in California, for example, to establish clean money so that the corporate interests couldn't buy the legislature, couldn't control the initiative process. That went down to defeat in a ballot initiative. It got about 25% of the vote. So we understand that taking money out of politics is obviously key to it. We also understand that we've had 25 million people in the streets demanding racial justice. And a good portion of that demand is around defunding the police. And yet there hasn't been huge, fundamental change in that area yet, legislatively. And so we also have to understand that we're going to have to mobilize with those forces, but also understand that those forces may not be enough. Even those forces working on these issues of racial justice may not be enough. And so we're going to have to, I think, understand ultimately that this is has to be a mobilized demand, an organized demand of the multiracial working class. And there's a segment of the white working class we're going to have to engage in this movement, just as we mobilize those racial justice organizations who are promoting the Breathe Act, promoting the Thrive Agenda, promoting Frontline, part of Frontline. We have to make Medicare for All central to that demand. What are we up against? Look at Ohio 11, the congressional race that Nina Turner ran. She was winning that race handily until the corporate money, in part on behalf of Jim Clyburn, one of the biggest beneficiaries of the pharmaceutical industry, third, I think, in the House leadership, chief, leader in the Congressional Black Caucus, mobilized corporate money to defeat her and elect a moderate Black Democrat. That was a primary we really needed to win. The political narrative is that the progressives are losing. That's not true. Obviously, the mayor's race in New York City went one way. The city council races went another. The other citywide races went to the left. If you look at comptroller and public advocate, Manhattan DA, and so forth. So we have to demonstrate electorally our power in a way that we haven't been able to since 2020. And many of us said at the time we need a president who's going to lead and expend political capital to win single payer. That has turned out to be true. And that the fact is that President Biden opposes Medicare for all, and that's been a huge stumbling block to move it in Congress. So that's where we look at, Chuck, I think, the movement building strategy. We've got to get out of the congressional paradigm. Congressional representatives have a role, but they can't be leaders of this movement. We've got to get a movement, literally a real coherent strategic movement that can demonstrate its political power in key elections and build and change the political dynamics so that these Democrats have to act. And so that's why California and the SB-UHC amendments are so important, is because as I mentioned, I think before, Governor Shumlin spoke at the Healthy California for All Commission and said that if California were seriously on the verge of implementing single payer, congressional Democrats would feel compelled to adopt it nationally. And I think there is a direct relationship, not between winning single payer in California in particular, but other states as well, big states, New York, for example, or maybe some combination of California, Oregon, Washington, New York, that would compel national change. This is not a substitute for national Medicare for all. We cannot counterpose. We are not excusing or letting southern states off the hook by doing single payer in California. We're building the political basis to win it nationally by doing it in the states where we have more ability to achieve it. It's a political strategy. It's not leaving people behind. It's not a preference for state programs. It's a political strategy because that's what we lack. And that's what Governor Shumlin, who I think has gotten the scars on this from Vermont, understood directly, is that the politics, when you have, name another governor that has led on this question other than Shumlin. And Gavin Newsom ran on single payer in California. We have to take advantage of that because the executive plays such a leading role. So look at that combination of things. Where's our strategic opportunity? How do we build a movement that can achieve political victories? And then how then do we leverage that for national change? That's our opportunity. That's why we're pushing this waiver reconciliation strategy. As Alex says, that's plan A. We're going to take a lot of bites at the apple if we have to. We've got it in play. That's going to make a difference. And we've got opportunities politically here, particularly if Governor Newsom survives the recall. He's going to get primaried from the left unless he comes out and directly engages with the Biden administration and leads on single payer. That's a political opportunity we're not going to forsake. And then finally, we need to obviously take advantage of the support that we have in New York and in Oregon and Washington, which are, I think, the other key states where this is moving. And not because those states are going to do it and then we're going to stop, because those states are going to leverage us to a federal program.
Terrific, Michael. Yeah, thanks for weaving that conversation between the actual legislative initiatives that are going on right now and the larger strategic vision. That was very good. Let's see, do I see Marcia has her hand up? Marcia Stedman. I think David Loud had questions from earlier this week that we talked about. So how about I go to Marcia and then David. Marcia?
Hi, thank you, everyone. Good to hear the discussion. My question is, when does the State-Based Universal Healthcare Act of Ro Khanna become important to push for, and what place does it have in this strategy?
Well, I think it's a House strategy, right? It doesn't have a Senate counterpart yet. And I think it comes into play depending on how the budget reconciliation process goes. And then it comes into play as a marker, like a lot of things, like the PRO Act, right? The Labor Reform Act, like the most robust Voting Rights Act, like the original Voting Rights Act legislation and the original John Lewis Act, two separate things, but both passed the House. And those are markers. Those are laying down what we believe the policy objectives are. If we can get it past the House and then we find a Senate vehicle for it, either the pieces we've got in play now or the full bill, then that's our opportunity, I think. And particularly if we can pass it in the House, we can get it maybe in play in some conference, if there are conference opportunities before the end of this session. Obviously, the key factor is keeping the House in Democratic hands, as inadequate as they are. If the Republicans take control, we're not moving it in the House either. Um,
You-
Thanks, Marcia. Is that good?
Yeah, thank you. So
Uh,
back burner for now.
right. Let's see, I'm going to bring up David, just a point of privilege, and then Julie Pease. David?
Well, Alex and Michael have largely answered the questions that we came up with previously regarding the state-based bill. I'm eagerly awaiting word from Ro Khanna's staffer, who is coordinating with Senator Warren's staffer. We have reason to believe that Senator Warren is planning to introduce the state-based companion bill when Sanders thinks the timing is right. It isn't clear what that timing might be, but a question for Michael is, if in fact Senator Warren introduces the Senate companion bill in the near future, what impact, what difference does that make in the strategies that you're discussing? I have one other quick question, which is, am I not right that the negotiation of drug prices for Medicare still has the additional component that whatever prices are negotiated would apply to all plans in the country, not just to Medicare?
Yes, on that. And yes, that's still in, and that's clearly eligible for reconciliation. So that's primarily a political fight. And, you know, it's hard to predict exactly where Senator Manchin, for example, will land on that, given the prominent role his daughter plays in the pharmaceutical industry. But assuming we can keep those provisions in, it is true that would apply to all plans. You can imagine the industry's desire to limit the number of drugs that are uncovered by that provision. And so you can imagine that's where the fight's going to be. I think I think the key question really in terms of the Khanna bill in the Senate is it's a relationship to both Senator Sanders' overall Medicare for All Act, right? And when he introduces that, and I suspect he does not want a state-based bill going in first, right? So I think that's number one. I think number two is we want to play out this reconciliation strategy, right? Before we have a fight over the full-blown bill. Because unlike our provisions that we're trying to get through reconciliation, the Khanna bill is perceived by Senator Wyden as replacing 1332. We're making additions to 1332, which since Senator Wyden wrote, at least claims authorship of, you know, it's a tougher sell to tell him, hey, we're going to replace what you did and we want you to go along with it, right? So we want to take our first shot at supplementing what he's done with key provisions from that bill before we try to go after the whole thing. So I think it does matter, right? Timing does matter. And if we're able to get those provisions into reconciliation, then we can say, see, that wasn't so bad, Senator Wyden. Let's take a look at all of this. Maybe we can come to agreement that maybe the whole approach, right, can be modified in a productive way. And so the camel nose under the tent, it's a pretty significant nose, may lead to the broader reform, because we don't necessarily think these provisions are, you know, completely sufficient. So.
David, good?
Oh, yes, okay, thanks. Just one minor clarification. As you know, in Khanna's bill, the new provisions for state-based universal don't replace 1332. They're added to 1332. It's an additional waiver.
Right, but he doesn't perceive it though. His staff
I see.
is not perceiving it as clearly in that way, right? Because they really see it as, oh, you really want state innovation waivers to mean single payer, right? And that's what the Khanna bill does. It turns 1332 into a single payer waiver. And that's where they think it is effectively a replacement. I don't think they're really right about that, but that's either the excuse or the sensitivity.
Okay, thank you.
I think Julie is up next, and then Charlie.
Yeah.
Julie?
Michael, I believe you answered my question regarding state-based universal healthcare. Plan A is to see what we can accomplish through reconciliation. And then if not, it's going through the House and the Senate as planned. as Plan B or whatever.
Right. Maybe that is even Plan C. And Plan B is taking that
Right.
same package that we want through reconciliation. And as Alex said, trying to attach it to something else, right?
I see.
That's must pass. Because it could get 60 votes and it could be included and kind of no one notices or it's easy to do, right? So that's really Plan B, is like, is there another vehicle, a must pass vehicle other than reconciliation? And then Plan C really is, yeah, can we pass it standalone?
Mm-hmm. And in Maine, Shelley Pingree, District 1, has been an original co-sponsor of both national single payer as well as state-based universal health care. So she's fully on board. And one of our former state reps, who's a big supporter of universal health care, did talk with Jared Golden, who's part of that little group of moderates trying to finesse his way through his Republican district this year. He actually himself was quite supportive of the idea, knowing that our state legislature, which gave him his start, has actually passed a resolution pushing for Maine to be able to do a state-based program and get those waivers going. So I think he will be supportive behind the scenes, although he's not going to want to put his name out there as a co-sponsor.
That's very helpful. I mean, I think that's very helpful. It's helpful in just keeping it in reconciliation, and it's helpful if we can find another vehicle, and it's helpful giving it credibility to the full House, because it would take some mod votes, obviously.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Charlie Swanson.
So I've got a question related to the out-of-pocket cap in Medicare. So Alex had mentioned that probably this next month is the most important time for reconciliation package, and the biggest fights are going to be about probably going to be, if we're successful in getting the budget resolution passed, about the out-of-pocket cap and lowering the age. So what do you suggest we should be thinking about doing within this next month to help those along? And I would say especially in Oregon, where Wyden is chair of the Senate Finance Committee.
Well, Charlie, I mean, this is the same thing, right, that we got with this state-based waiver approach. I mean, Wyden is going to be the gatekeeper on this. And we absolutely have to convince him that that the Medicare expansion is politically, essential and the right policy. And there are some very technical objections that Senator Schumer's office was raising, and that I suspect came from Senate finance staff, who are not our friends, as you know, right? The Senate finance staffers are very industry oriented. And so I think what we have to do is drill down a little bit more on those objections, right, that they're raising, which have to do with the impact on employer plans, the potential for employers to drop coverage and force more people onto Medicare, and the quote unquote undesirability of that. And so that's where I think we've got to focus, is we've got to take away the policy objections that are used by Senate finance staff as cover for Senator Wyden not doing what's politically popular, right? And so that's where I mean, Oregon is again in a key position on this question. The out-of-pocket cap is much harder to get, but it's a money question, pure and simple. And that's why what Alex said was, hey, if some money becomes available, we got to grab it, for the out-of-pocket cap. That one's not being discussed because the money is so tight. I don't know that there's huge objection to it. There is some objection to it for those people who favor Medicare Advantage, because they know that's an advantage of those plans. But it's really a question of money, and whether there's money that we can try to grab for it. And
well, so I guess I've got a question related to that. One is I actually probably want to talk with you offline about the technical objections and try to understand those better. The second is, to me, the out-of-pocket cap is more important than lowering the age, and lowering the age is going to take money. And so, I mean, I guess I'm not sure where people generally stand on that, but to me, that's a more important piece of the Medicare improvements than lowering the age. So.
There are definitely people who agree with you, Charlie. There's more political momentum around the age lowering, but there's a lot of people who think that the out-of-pocket cap is the key issue. Others say, well, you can buy a Medigap policy, so what's the problem? The problem is those aren't cheap. That's the problem. So I think we're better off demanding both and not trying to make a decision, right? And asserting that the money is there. If we're achieving maximum savings from prescription drug price reform, going back to, the question that David raised, we want Medicare price negotiation to apply to every drug, right? And the more drugs it applies to, the more savings it generates, and the more savings it generates can be applied to age expansion and elimination of out-of-pocket. So those demands, I think, are of a piece.
Great. Thanks, Charlie and Michael. I'm just scanning through the chat box here real quickly to see if we're missing anything. If anybody wants to raise their hand and highlight something that you've written out here, you're welcome to do that. I know that we have a couple of quick updates. Mike Huntington?
Right. Michael, I know you mentioned that Senator Wyden has expressed some support for single payer, but when we go to our town hall meetings, it's very unclear. In fact, he will say, I believe healthcare is a human right, but then he'll say, one shoe doesn't fit all. What they need in Portland, Maine is not the same as what we need in Oregon. So he is very evasive about this. And I'm hoping maybe you've heard something more promising than we hear at our town hall meetings with him.
Well, when we have these discussions with staff, Mike, they never say he doesn't want to do this. In fact, they say he wants states to be able to do single payer. So that's really what we're going on, right? And so if we can demonstrate through, which I think we are actually doing in Oregon, right, that this is the policy direction of the Universal Healthcare Task Force, we'll get the amendment passed, in 22, right? The resolution passed on the ballot in 22. These are the things that are going to demonstrate to him that, yeah, this is what Oregon wants. And so that's where I'm going on. He says one side doesn't fit all. That's a goddamn industry talking point. And that reflects, that reflects his staff. They're industry people. He's been part of the industry too. And so it's just a stupid argument. One size doesn't fit all. Of course, everyone needs guaranteed health care. Of course, everyone needs to save billions of dollars. Of course, everyone needs to go to the doctor of their choice. One size does fit all. I'm sorry. And the only reason they say that is because it's poll tested. There is no policy or financial rationale behind it. It is simply a polling meme that they have adopted, because that's a message that works.
Thank you. Yeah. We'll keep after it.
Yeah.
There's another development that I thought, I think I highlighted it to you, Michael, earlier this week. David's on top of it. Our colleague up in Washington State, Bevan McLeod, assembled state legislators across California, Oregon, and Washington in July. It was as a step toward creating a collaborative regional effort, perhaps beginning with bulk purchasing of pharmaceuticals. It was an introductory meeting among these legislators convened by Bevan McLeod and her assistant. And then she's planning right now to do a follow-up meeting in January with citizen leaders in the healthcare justice movement. So this is an important development. I just wanted to, you want to respond to that at all, Michael or David? That's pretty clear, straightforward.
Well, David, go ahead.
Really nothing to add except that there had been some prior talk in the labor movement in what people were referring to as the blue wall of California, Oregon, Washington. And in the pandemic, there was an initial step taken by those three states to pool their resources for PPE. And so that was another step that had been taken. So this is all kind of building.
Right, and also the language addition in the SBUHC Ro Khanna's bill was an improvement on Pramila Jayapal's bill. Michael, you were about to say something.
Right, that's what I was going to say, Chuck, is that it's not a coincidence that we chose the multi-state waiver provision, the ability of states to jointly apply for waivers to be included in the budget reconciliation proposal. It's precisely for this reason. And I would second what David said, is that I've talked to labor leaders, particularly in the hospitality industry, who are very interested in this collaboration around prescription drug purchasing. And if we can get prescription drug reform passed at the federal level, there's an opportunity for the states to further advantage, maybe go beyond the formulary that's approved at the federal level, for example, and achieve even additional savings. So I think it's hugely significant. I think Bevan's efforts are seminal, vital, and it is, and that's why I'm really trying to engage Governor Newsom more in this effort around the reconciliation language. So I've been talking to his staff about that, because I know we haven't gotten as much traction with the Oregon and Washington state governors. And so I'm hoping that we can then take the California executive leadership and help leverage that in the other states, and let the legislative leaders also leverage it. We've got a speaker who talks, in support of single payer in California, but we haven't seen any action on the legislation. And all three states have task forces devoted to universal health care. So you can see how all the stars align.
One additional point, the reason that Bevan has chosen January for the next gathering of the three states folks is that, as I understand it, the Oregon and California commission's reports are due by then. So there'll be that to work with. And Washington State's new permanent Universal Health Care Commission will be up and running by then. As I understand it, the California and Oregon commissions, once their reports are delivered, they dissolve, they go away as commissions, but our commission will be permanent. Anyway, that's the point of the timing for January, as I understand it.
Yeah, I think that January, and Charlie knows this, is actually an initial report, but I don't think the final report I heard in Oregon is due until October.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll have something to go on in Oregon, but we will, everything I'm hearing is that we will have something in California by then.
Yeah, we're just at the top of the hour. I did see Michael Goodman had his hand up. I wanted to just give Michael an opportunity just to put a ribbon on this today. And this is really one of these meetings that I'm definitely going to be listening to the recording. There's a lot of very good, dense material and analysis here that is very worthy. And please be sure to carry it forward with your organizations. We need to multiply ourselves. So please do that. Michael, did you have a quick question?
Yes, nothing terribly profound, but I learned yesterday that in the state of Washington, where there's an active nomination or pledge signing drive for a referendum in the state of Washington on single payer, but unfortunately the organizations that were doing it decided to suspend the collecting of signatures because of the reawakening of COVID. So that's not good news.
Yeah, well, thanks for the update there, Michael. Yeah, these are tough times, really difficult times. I mean, I woke this morning, frankly, with body aches and chills. I don't know what's going on. It's just take care of yourselves, everybody. Love each other. Take extra precautions. Great meeting today. Michael, did you want to add anything? We good?
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to engage with all of you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Michael.
All right, we'll get the recording around. I'll hang back here if folks have any questions. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
I'd like to know when the recording might be available, because this was, we had a PNHP Washington meeting a couple nights ago, and this information here would have totally cleared up all kinds of questions. So I'm gonna put out a blast to our 1,200, email list, and I'd like to be able to link this and say it's a must-see.
I should have it by mid-afternoon, David. I just need to convert it to a YouTube form and then get it to you.
I'm gonna wait to send out that blast until I have that link, Mike. But
I'll get
this
right on it.
this was totally amazing.
I'll get right on it.
I got a question for Catherine. Catherine, if you're still in the call, I see your image, but if you're still in the call, could you please clarify for us what was just reported about the signature gathering? Is that in fact that it's being suspended for the moment?
Yes, it's true. I was going to announce it, but there was, not really enough time. On the 17th, we had an emergency board meeting and voted to suspend, at least for now, because of the Delta virus, our signature gathering work. We just didn't feel comfortable sending our volunteers out into large crowds right now, and we were having a hard time even getting a lot of the volunteers to go out into the large crowds. And a lot of us do work in the healthcare field, and so we see it's exploding in my hospital, and I'm sure it's exploding everywhere because I live in a small rural hospital north of Seattle, and we received a patient that was airlifted from Hoquiam just last, because they could not find a bed anywhere closer. And I mean, that just really blew me away. But yeah, we went from 0 to 2 patients with COVID, maybe a month ago, to now my last stretch, we were up to 6. And our sister hospital in Mount Vernon, which is much bigger, is more like 150 beds, was up to 17. And they had been down to 5. So it is impacting it. It's impacting our ability to be able to do and it's out there. And people are getting sick from it. So we weren't happy with it. We're still going to be meeting and talking about what we can do in the next, until the end of December. A lot of it's just going to depend on what happens.
Right. So. I know that must have been a tough call for you guys, but wow.
It was not without a lot of emotion, and so.
Yeah. Health and safety first, Catherine. Sorry to hear that, but it's give our best to the folks at Whole Washington. Anybody else comment or question? Okay. All right.
Wanted to know if this is Catherine Hunt. Is there any progress being made on repealing that Bush era law that requires us all to pay pharmacy insurance when we're on Medicare?
Are you talking about Medicare Part D, the drug plans?
Yes, yeah. There's a threat if you don't pay the monthly drug insurance, then ever after, your pharmaceuticals are going to cost extra.
Right. If you don't sign up within the first period, that when you do sign up later, there's a penalty for every month you could have been in the plans and didn't. Yeah, right. And that's a permanent penalty.
Right. But the thing is, too, you can't drop it either.
But the penalty, if you calculate it, is so low, according to Dr. Belk in Alameda, California, that you're well ahead by not signing up for that until you need a brand name drug, then pay that penalty, which still will be far less than what you're paying for the premium of Part D now.
Could be. It's 1% per month that you could have been in and weren't. And so that's a tough calculation to make, but
if you read David Belk's information on it, it looks pretty persuasive that you can get by without it until you need a brand name drug.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've cut my glaucoma med costs by 90%, just by going straight generic. And you have to ask the questions. They're not going to volunteer answers at the pharmaceuticals. Their hands are tied. You have to be proactive.
How did you cut the price?
I actually found out one of the brand drugs, it has the exact same 2 ingredients that are available in generics.
Mhm.
And that was costing me, that was $60 out of pocket with insurance. But I don't even use my insurance anymore. I don't need to use my insurance. I just buy generic straight out of pocket. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
Barbara
I-
has.
Barbara, you're muted. Barbara.
Barbara?
My question is looking at the people and this on this call and where they're from. How do we bring in other people from other states, such as southern states? And I know there are people like Rita Valenti, and there was somebody in Louisiana I used to go on their call, and much of the East Coast. I know Barbara Pearson from League of Women Voters. So how do we bring in more people from a variety of states to educate, to bring them into the call to learn what's happening, and to then tie them, that we're more tied together. I was in Oregon for a year, and yeah, that's a good place to be, to start implementing, moving toward a single payer. And I also feel we need to get out and educate people. I speak to people and I carry brochures in my car about single payer. There are still so many people that don't know even what the word means. So between the lack of cross-section of states and so many people still not knowing what single payer is, how do we go about making that change?
Yeah, well, the premise of one pair of states is going back to our founding in 2009, was to work with existing statewide universal healthcare organizations. And we do, you're right. I mean, we're not diverse enough geographically, and frankly, we're not diverse enough demographically. We need to be younger, frankly, and we need to have more Black, brown, and indigenous people in these circles.
You also need rural. You need the rural areas also.
Absolutely, right.
And I've fallen short on my end because I have a storytelling workshop that I somehow need to put together. I don't want to be in New York State. It's very dead here. Single payers seems, I don't know what's going on. There's no communication like there is in Oregon, where HCAO puts out a newsletter. Washington State, there's information. People in charge here, nothing. So they may have the money, but we definitely, if we can pull it together, we have the power, the numbers, we have the brains. We just need to listen, educate, and advocate, and make a more diverse movement. We're a very exclusive movement. And this, it makes me very depressed. I'd like to see things change in a more positive direction.
Yeah, well, we are actually doing good work, groundbreaking work in the state of North Carolina on all these fronts.
In North Carolina,
rural, urban, and the diversity of and including because we don't talk enough about this, faith communities. Faith communities. There are too many folks on the left who just dismiss faith communities. And if you look at the civil rights movement, the success of the civil rights movement, that obviously was a core constituency. And I think if we're going to succeed, we have to embrace faith communities that share our values. I mean, that's it. It's not rocket science.
And you have, of course, Reverend Barber, who is a supporter of single payer from the NAACP.
Reverend Rodney Sadler is on our board, and he's a close lieutenant to Reverend Rodney Sadler. Yeah.
And one more thing, and then I'll let someone else go. We have to, it is important to have to join with the faith communities, because some groups, that is their orientation. And if we want to bring them in, we need to be working with the groups that they are a part of. and not, you know, stand back and stand on our high horse and say, oh no, we don't do religious interfaith. We don't do that, you know. So,
Right. Right.
thanks, Chuck.
Yep, you bet. Barbara, where are you located exactly?
Right now I'm in Ithaca, New York, but I was a taste where Cornell University is. If
You're
that, the Finger Lakes.
We didn't ask the question, but your new governor, who's replaced now Cuomo, your new governor.
Hochul.
Is
Kathy Hochul.
any sense as to whether she's pro universal healthcare?
I understand. I somehow doubt it. She was, I am pretty sure, a banking lobbyist before she got involved with politics. I'd have to double check. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to say probably she will not support. But you have Democrats that stand up and they run on the New York Health Act. This is, you know, previous. And the minute the bill would come to the floor, they'd turn tail and they'd run. They would run if it would come out of the committee, and they'd go, we need more study. So the Democrats, I'm not too trusting of them at this point either. People do what's good for them. That's why I feel it's so critical to go to the people. But how you combat the money, the people that get the money to run, this is part of the problem in this country.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, you bet. Stay in touch, definitely.
Well, hopefully I'll be here for the next.
Yeah. We need more representation from New York, in fact. So thank you. Any other folks have questions or comments?
Catherine had her hand up for a little bit.
Catherine Hunt or Lewandowski?
I just wanted to mention, you guys were talking about the drugs that I just realized, like my last rich on, that a patient mentioned they were buying their insulin over the counter at Walmart. So we Googled it because I was like, you can get insulin over the counter at Walmart. And they're selling all the old insulin vials, the NPH and the 7030s that they used to have before the big pharma, you know, made changes to them and repatented them. And anyway, they're selling them for $25 a vial, and they're selling like 19,000 vials a day and I'm like, and people can just go and buy insulin at Walmart. I was just amazed. Although he was trying to manage his diabetes without seeing a doctor or any kind of follow-up, he wasn't doing a bad job. You know, it was kind of interesting. I had never heard that before. Anyway.
Just to elaborate on reaching out to faith groups, last night I was on a living room conversation with our local Jewish synagogue members, and I also chair UCC congregational witness, justice and witness group for the state, and we're working through our conference to reach all of our member congregations, 40 of them in Oregon and Idaho and Washington. And we're going to reach out to other conferences outside ours to see what they're doing. So I'm hoping others will be doing that with their faith groups.
Mike, I would just say in where I am, there is no interest from the two synagogues here in single payer. I actually tried to start a health group, and I really have trouble now belonging to this synagogue. They no interest at all. When we produced Michael Milligan's play Mercy Killers, I wanted to advertise it in the conservative synagogues. Their whatchamacallit, I can't remember what you call it. They have like a listserv or something. I don't even think they mail. The rabbi said, no, this is not our problem for us. I do not find beyond Palestine and Israel and the food bank, the interest it's just not there. Here, I'm speaking here.
I'll send you the slide set and the text of my talk to the group last night and see if you can use it somehow.
And, you know, Kelly, if she's still here, had a very good suggestion. I don't want to take her. Yeah, she's still here. Kelly, maybe you would, you know, you would say to, you know, what you wrote in the chat about based on what I had said to Chuck and the group about trying to bring in more groups from different states. I think that would be fair for you to say it, not me. If you
Sure. I know when I travel, I try to reach out to progressive groups. Like I reached out to Wisconsin one year, and that was really educational about all kinds of rural issues because I'm from Seattle. And I stayed in touch with those people for a while. This was before 2016. I have been going back since then, and I noticed that they aren't as active. And I can understand that there's just so many overwhelming issues, but and so I wasn't sure. I actually tried to figure out who to get back in contact with, but that was like a computer ago, you know, and I couldn't find the contacts. But I think maybe we should all be trying to do that, that when we travel, we reach out to people that we know are interested in the issues, and then try, the purpose being to connect with them and to try to help them think about next steps for germinating something in their communities, even no matter how small, and then trying to stay in touch with them. And that was all I was thinking. Thanks.
But I'm wondering if beyond, you know, traveling, if there's a way that we could get a list, and even I would make a phone call, you know, make phone calls to, you know, to somebody in the group that would be, you know, that could be part of the one payer states, if there's a list. Well,
there are some groups, like the League of Women Voters has a national interest group.
I'm part of that.
And so that seems like a great way to try to reach out to different states and get people in that, and then one payer. Like it's all, you know, it's one step after another, it seems to me.
Yeah, it's a variety of approaches.
Yes, yeah, just whatever we can.
They have a call on Sunday,
right.
And I will bring that up during the call.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Thank you for your idea. Thank you so much.
It seems like teachers union should be lighting a fire right now. My God, they're on the front lines of everything. And I'm a member of the American Federation of Teachers, but they do not support single payer.
No.
Currently, they do not, and it's shameful. I mean, especially given how everyone is at risk who steps back into a schoolroom these days. It's just shameful.
At the same time, Chuck, I think what is being learned from the unions is that you can't go to the leadership. You've got to go to the members, and same with other unions. And the New York teachers, I think, were one of the bring downs of the bill, of the New York Health Act. I can put the article that was sent to me, I think by a League of Women Voters person, in the chat if you'd like. So I think no matter what, the leadership now, in some ways, you'll forgive me, sleeps with the management, and that we have got to go to the members, the people, and somehow get to speak with them. I think is so critical. And, you know, coming from union stock and from the United Federation of Teachers, Albert Shanker's union, my parents, they banked so much, as other unions have, on the benefits and how to show that single payer isn't going to take anything away from them, that it will enhance. And damn, teachers don't get paid enough, that the money can go into wages and paying them for what they do in the school, as well as from the home. How many times people call from the house about a child, and the teacher spends like a good long time on the phone. So I agree with you there. It's very important.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for your contributions today. And I thought it was a very powerful presentation, and one, again, I hope everybody will share with your communities. You know, it's a moving target, our political system. And I mean, if Alex Lawson, you know, tells you that it's complicated and unpredictable, you know it is. This guy, he's as sharp as anybody I've met in Washington, D.C. In terms of his analysis, and Michael too. So we're really, really blessed to have had them with us today.
Well, thank you for your persistence, Chuck. It's taken what, 2 or 3 years for you to get Alex involved with us, but you stuck with it, and so appreciate that.
You bet. You bet. All
Hope
right.
you feel better too.
Yeah. Thanks. If you need to save the chat or anything like that, looks like somebody dropped a link in here. Catherine Hunt.
Yeah, I just had a question if people have comments on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if anybody has a chance to kind of glance at it and see what you think.
This is what Barbara was talking about. In New York City, retirees brace for switch to privatized healthcare.
That's a different, this is why the New York City unions blocked the vote. I have it as a Word document. If anybody wants a copy, I'd be happy to send it to you.
Yes, thank you. I'd be interested in that.
Here's my email is there, so if you take it, I'll be happy to send that to you.
Okay. I tell you what, shall I just put my email here in the chat?
Sure, I'll copy it. I think I'm gonna copy it just in case I screw up with the.
Okay. It's a topic of conversation right now. In, you know, a local health Medicare for All group.
Chuck, I'm getting yours as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna pull off. I need to actually just
go feel better.
Yeah. Thanks. All right.
It's too expensive to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Uh-huh.